Hi everybody, welcome back to week 5 of nursing research. Happy New Year! I hope you really had a good time off on your break. All right, week 5. So this week we've got a couple different things that we're talking about in the discussion questions. So we've got the purpose of collecting demographic data. And you might look at this question and just think of something off the top of your head, one reason, but there's actually a plethora of reasons to collect demographic data depending on your study, the type of study, what population you're looking at. So I'm interested to hear which aspect that you pick up on in your DQ questions this week. And then we have a question about novice researchers developing their own instruments. So as we're further into this course, we talk about validity and reliability of instruments. If you don't have a good tool to collect your data, then you can't really trust the results that you obtain. And so having a reliable and reliable and valid tool is really quite important so that you can trust your results. I was once teaching, I think it was a nursing management class in an ADN program, and I did a questionnaire. I think it was about halfway through the course, wanted to see how my students were doing, that sort of thing. And it's interesting, I hadn't gone through my doctoral program at all, but was master's prepared and thought I'd put together a really good questionnaire. And the way I phrased some of the questions, instead of asking if I felt that the students were meeting the class objectives, I asked if I felt that their skills had increased. Now, some of the students, definitely their skills had increased, but others had had some management background and background in other fields. And so while they were meeting the course objectives, they didn't feel that these particular skills had increased. And so that skewed my data just by the way I asked that question. So the tool that you use is really, really important to see whether or not you can trust your data. So it'll be good to talk about that this week. If you look at the lecture that was provided this week, it talks about measuring and analyzing the different data that we obtain from the different types of studies. If you think about quantitative data, we're looking at the quality of our measurement. And one measurement that I think all of us have used is the pain scale. It's kind of universally used, I would think, with adults, sometimes with adolescents and children, or the FACES scale. The only thing about the pain scale, and it's been widely validated and shown to be reliable, is that there's no clear definition about like what separates a 5 from a 6, about what that interval is. And it is very subjective. We find some patients who really have a good idea of how they can use that scale, and other patients really have a hard time wrapping their head around it. And then you have people who a 10 means very different things depending on their experience. If you've had maybe a woman who's gone through labor and had a vaginal birth, that might be more of a 10, or some type of traumatic injury. But let's say you have a young adult who's never experienced significant pain. They really don't have a real good concept of what a 10 is. So even with tools that are reliable and valid, we can still have some issues and have to be very careful about how we're using those measurements. And then when we talk about analyzing qualitative data, there are some guidelines depending on which research tradition you're using, if it's grounded theory or case study or whatever. And but they're guidelines, and there can be a lot of subjectivity. What I have found is that it's very helpful to go back to the participant in the study and either, let's say if you've recorded and have transcribed their data, their interview, that you send that back to the person and make sure that that captured what they were trying to say. or else you summarize what you believe the big points were from the interview and you go back and confirm that with the participant so that you can more accurately feel that you captured what they were trying to say, their experiences. So there are ways to increase the quality of our data. We just have to keep that researcher's mind of constantly evaluating what we're doing as we're going through these research studies so that we can be as accurate as we can. All right, let's look at this week's assignment. So no individual assignment this week, but there is your group assignment. Now, I've given you all feedback about your the CLC project that you turned in previously, and as far as kind of direction I think you should go, what I think you need more of in terms of your research articles. So this week you actually are going to turn in the table. There's not a narrative, a paper, or whatever. You really just turn in the table and you'll be fine. But that table, depending on if it's a qualitative or quantitative research or what the article's like, you may or may not fill out all of the columns. For instance, if it's a qualitative article, you're not going to have independent and dependent variables, okay, like you would with an experiment. So I want you to fill out all of the columns that apply to your articles. It said you can go up to 10. You don't need to have 10, but hey, if there's that much out there, great. You definitely need to have 5, 6, 7, kind of in that range. Definitely. Let's see. So some of your articles might be background articles that just give information to kind of substantiate why there's a problem. You might have a couple of those thrown in. The majority, though, should be actual studies that have shown that this intervention that you've selected does have evidence to back it up. So there has been literature to prove that this practice you want to implement has already been found to be successful. That's what should be the majority of your articles. Okay. All right. Let's see. The last day of our class, you turned in part 1 critique of your own individual articles. And I'm in the process of scoring those, and I should be done with those pretty soon. And recovering quite much better from my surgery than before the holidays, and so I should be much more active in the classroom for the second half of our course. All right, that's about it. I hope you're ready to rejuvenate and to start back to work again, and I'll see you in the main forum.